Is Ken of Tortoise Capital. I want to talk about emotional resiliency, the art of the sale. So, I get a lot of email marketing messages, and I read them all because I like to understand the psychology and the appeal of hurry up and do it and close the deal and all that stuff. So, there's a whole cottage industry out there about how to write good marketing copy, and some people would consider that to be a spawn of Satan and all that stuff. But my dad was in sales, and there's a certain psychology, a bulletproof psychology that you have to be in sales, to be able to make cold calls. So this little marketing program made a nice pitch and said, hey, our team will help you triple your sales overnight if you follow our path. And it was like not $3,000, not $1,000, but if you order for, $99 and then all that shit. So it's not shit. This is good stuff. But I started thinking about this. I started reframing it and said, they offered this little picture. This is the sequence that they follow on every marketing call. And it makes it very clear and no BS. And it gets you through overcoming your internal qualms about sales. Now, not everybody's made for sales, but it's a learnable skill. And like anything, success can lead to more confidence and proficiency and all that stuff. But I started thinking about the bulletproof mentality you got to have to be in sales. It's something I struggle with all the time as a kind of an introvert in some ways. And I've always wanted to be the not sales guy, the not guru guy. And so for decades, I have underpriced my materials, and because I always felt some internal qualms. And then I finally listened to some advice. Alan Weiss, who's a great consulting guy, said, trust your clients to establish the value that you're creating for them. And don't presume to know what value you are providing them. How do you know that? You don't know that. You can't know that. They can tell you, and then you know what they told you. But let them, as grown men and women, be the ones that place the value on your material. So I started thinking about that. And I started comparing that to the psychology of salesmanship here. And I started thinking about the hardest thing there is to do in the world is public speaking. Well, that's not the hardest thing in the world. The hardest thing to do in public speaking is when your topic is making a cold call and asking somebody to part with their hard-earned money for the thing that you propose to offer them at what you think is a fair price. So that's public speaking fear plus asking for consideration to spend your money on my material. Well, what is the difference between that and going into the market and making a cold call on every trade every time? Because you're making a cold call with the market, and the market is this universal monster out there ready to eat you alive because there's sharks and T-Rexes and whatever, army ants and viruses. All the threats are out there in your mind and in the market, because they're in the market and therefore they're in your mind. So all of those things are there just waiting, and you know that, you feel that. And so you're walking in there with your sword and shield and armor and your psychology, and it's you against the market, it feels like. And you got to make a cold call and make a proposition that says, I think this idea has a chance to survive and then thrive. And on the other side of that trade is the universe. And who are you to go face to face with the universe? Well, here's who you are. You're you. That's good enough. What else were you going to be except yourself? Your best self. You don't even have to be your best self. You just got to be good enough that day. So how do you get better? Well, to me, this reframing is really all about, I think the same mentality that it takes to be successful in sales is the same mentality that gives you the emotional resilience to go into the market each and every day. It's the same mentality that a white belt faces on the first day that you walk onto the mat in the dojo in public and you start to randori with your practice partner. So how do we do that in the dojo? In Sensei Frank Berry's dojo, you walk in, you pair up, you bow, I throw you, you throw me, we bow, and then you move on to the next person. No big deal. You're just doing judo. You're just throwing each other, and that's your trading partner on your team in your dojo. And after a while, the first throw is not even the hardest one. The second throw is the hardest one because you've already been through one of them, and now you're really thinking about it. So we just go up and you start throwing. And so the black belts in our club just bow to a white belt, and you go and you throw them gently to the ground. Make sure that they land correctly and safely, and that's your job as a black belt, is to help them experience how to fall properly at the tail end of your throw. And so you know how to throw them properly. And kids are easier because they're lighter. And if they're bigger and heavy, you start from the ground or from the knees and learn how to fall from your knees to the ground. So you just get over that and you get on with it. So I'm going to take this kid's $99 course just because he gave me this free sequence and helped me achieve this realization of reframing. So what I just did there was reframe and reconnected to the psychology of sales in the world and what it takes in a digital world to scale and to make calls and to close the deal in an honorable way. And look at what his sequence does. Set the agenda says the agenda is going to be this sequence, right? And if you're going to work with me, that's kind of the sequence, says the salesman. But then it just starts in, can you be more honorable than this? Understand why they're here. Understand them. Understand their business. Understand their pain. What they want. Figure out who's responsible for what we got to do to get from here to there. Working backwards. Close the deal. Get to closure. Don't leave it hanging. You owe them closure. Here's what I offer, and then your turn, and we'll just sort it out from there. And if it's a fit, it's a fit. If it's not a fit, no worries. Honorable, bow, go to the next partner. That's all. That's all it is. Now, think about this relationship between you and the market and the trade that you're about to put on. And that's why I'm going to send this kid $99 because he helped me realize this, just because I've been thinking about this sequence. And it helped me connect in a deep way with my dad. Because that guy was a sales engineer, was the first kid in his family that went to college. I'm describing my emotions here. And now if I was a cynical bastard, I would just say, that helps me establish an emotional connection with you and all that stuff. So I'm not doing that. I'm just kind of telling you the truth here is what I'm saying. So the genuine feeling, though, is I'm remembering my dad right now and just how brave he was. And I understand a little bit more about him and how hard it was to drive around making sales calls with guys trying to sell them widgets for their hydraulics business. That was my favorite times in life. Was driving around with him in the summer making calls in that old Buick Skylark, and I got to go on the cold calls with him and we just talk about stuff in the car. So now I want you to think about this as the trade that you're going to make. You set the agenda. It's your system, and you entered the dojo when you're ready, not when the market. You don't have to trade just because the market wants to trade. The market always wants to trade. It'll always be there, so there's no hurries and no worries. So you decide when you enter. You know what you're trying to do, your objectives. You know what your business is all about. You know what hurts the most is a 1 hour loss, and you're going to discipline yourself so that whatever price you have to see to get you out of that trade, that's your 1R. And you're not going to take more than 1R, because once you know what that price is, and then that price is shown, then you feel that pain before you even enter the trade. And then examine that pain and say, oh yeah, that's right. That's the worst that it's ever going to feel. And I've already felt the worst I'm ever going to feel, because I'm only going to take a 1R loss. So examine the pain. What I want out of this is the opportunity to trade, to see how it turns out. That's all I want. And I'm responsible for my results. I know the difference between now and then is simply the duration of the trade. And when I close the trade, then it's going to be what it is. So that's the offer I make to the market. I'm willing to trade under these conditions. Now I'm going to shut up. And none of this even matters. But every one of those objections is some other inner voice inside you wanting to change your rules. So, no. I'm going to trade the way I'm going to trade. And then I'll study the results. So this is the cold calling sequence he recommends to seal the deal. I think it's the emotional connection between you and the market in every trade that you make. And if you just look at it in those terms and realize each and every trade you're going to make is just like that, where do you think the emotional resilience comes from? It's going through lots of repetitions of this stuff and getting a thick skin and trading the way you're going to trade according to your rules and your agenda. Staying open and honest to it, the intuitive feel. So I'm going to go take this kid's course. And, well, I'm going to sign up for it and pay for it. I'll see if I go through it. I don't know. I'm going to be immune to all their coaching and mentoring, I think. Until I fully process this moment. But I wanted to share that idea with you and talk about emotional resilience. And this is a lesson that's in the, as soon as I get done recording this, it's going to be one of the lessons in the psychology course on the Talent LMS learning system. So I thought I'd share that with you in a genuine moment. So there's that. So one of the other lessons in there is the owl meditation, also a hat tip to my dad. That was his totem animal. And there's a lesson in there that talks about how to go through the owl meditation. I'll post that on Patreon too. And it's something that I do not only every week, but also a rapid process that I go through every time I feel off of my emotional center. And especially if I'm feeling angry for any reason, with myself or with anybody else, and turn that into something productive. So this is the mental imagery of the owl, and then this is a response that I had, that someone who did the owl meditation went through, and that's a lesson in there, so I'll just share that with you. Whoop, sorry. And that's one person's response to going through the owl meditation. In that lesson, this is the owl meditation script. And it just kind of goes through the story of the owl meditation, some techniques. It's kind of can't see it on the screen because it's too small, but that whole script is in there. I'm going to post both of those documents on Patreon in public, so you can go check it out. It's something I do every week religiously.
Nice.
And something that I do whenever I am off of my zero state, especially if I'm feeling angry or proud. Anytime that I'm feeling unworthy for any reason, and that's how I get immediately back to zero state and into a proper frame of mind. So that's an important psychological lesson and a technique for you to learn, in my opinion. So I offer that for you. And thanks, Dad. I'll see you guys in the chat room.